Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm going to be talking about style. And I get a lot of questions from people pertaining to style, and they're curious as to what they need to develop a style, and if they should be learning from reality, or learning from copying other artists, or just drawing and a style is going to develop naturally. And I think the biggest issue I've found with the whole style thing is that when artists talk about style, they seem to be talking about two different concepts. So to simplify, I've labeled these concepts manufactured style, and inherent style. And the easiest way I've thought to explain this is with a signature. So with a signature, here's my signature, and it's okay, so what I chose for this is the manufactured style. I could have done anything. I could have signed it S. Yasin or Sycra Yasin, whatever. That is all manufactured. That's a choice, right? It could be this or it could be that. And usually the way most people find their signature is just trying things. Taking a piece of paper and trying this and then trying that and trying this and whatever. So this is what I would consider the manufactured style. It's what you think about, and usually through iteration, which is just, doing things over and over again, you find it. Iteration. And it's something that you've chosen, right? It's not something that just landed on you. Now, with inherent style, what I think about that is sort of how you hold your pen. The way I make my signature is going to be unique to me. There's also a bias I have to draw at an angle like this. This angle is a bias. So even if someone tried to forge my signature, they wouldn't be able to do it perfectly, and that's because of inherent style, which is more, so this is in manufactured would be what you choose to do, so what you do or choose, and then inherent is how you do it, how you hold the pen, and it also goes to other things, just influences. So some people are pretty much all in the inherent style category, and unfortunately a lot of artists are, and that's why I feel style doesn't get the fair treatment it deserves. I don't think people talk about it as it really is, and instead it gets talked about more purely from one side. And then there's this idea as well of whether you should learn from reality or not. And I think when you understand about style, the decision's a bit easier. So first of all, there's the thing with realism versus style. And some people like to simplify it like this. There's realism on one end, and you can either do this, or you can stylize in anime. It's oh, okay. Or cartoony, so they'll say, oh, my style is cartoony, or my style is realistic. I don't like to think of it as these two, because first of all, they're very separate, right? You're either anime and cartoony or comic booky or whatever, or you're realistic. The way I like to think of it is, sure, you can have reality, and then you can have stylization. But I think of it like this, these are connected. They're on one spectrum. You could be more stylized, or, let's say reality is this. It's okay, you can do this. And then stylization is this. And see, there's a spectrum. You go between these points. And how do you go about doing that? Well, for style, in terms of developing this, it really comes from where are you basing things from? And I think there are three areas artists tend to base things from. So the first is they don't really think about style, and these people just sort of ignore style. So this is like level one. Level one is the people who ignore a style. And this doesn't mean they have a bad style. It just means, because they could have a very, very strong style. Like very intuitive people, they don't need to think about style, but they just naturally have such a strong impulse towards a style. Like, again, to bring up my friend Bob Meatbag, he's pretty much this way where you can't really get him to get out of his style. It's just so strong. So for these people, they can just sort of ignore the idea of style, and style will come in anyway. Then I think the next level, level two, are the people who sort of mimic a style. Or, you know, sometimes you could say steal a style, sometimes you could say, you know, they try and find a style through other styles. So this strategy is more like you're almost shopping for styles. Like you're going down the aisle and you see like, oh, you know, oh, here's some Jim Lee style. I like that. Let me put some of that in. I really like the way Jim Lee draws faces, female faces or something. Okay, let's put that in. Oh, okay, but I really like the way Todd McFarlane does inking. Okay, so put that in. And I really like the way Glenn Keane does gesture. So, okay, I'm going to try and mimic that. And none of these are, like, when I write level 1, level 2, it's not to say one is better in a way, because what really matters is that the end result, right? Like, that you have a style in the end, or not that you have a style, but that you have something you're happy with. And so these people, I think it's better for developing a style if you don't have a very strong inherent style. Like if you're not one of these people, like for instance, as I said with my buddy Bob, he can't get rid of his style, like even if he tries. And for me, I can do a lot of different styles, but my personal style shines through much more quietly. It's not so overt. It's not like, here's my style, I can't get rid of it. Which I wish I had, because that would make everything simpler. And then with level 3, these are people who create style. And this is really where I feel I fall into the level 3 category. And the way you create a style is sometimes you can combine, you know, mimicking it, a style, like you can look at other artists. You can also, you know, just do your own thing and ignore a style. But what's different about level 3 is instead of just looking at other artists, what you're doing is you're looking at reality. And from reality, you're choosing to stylize it. So going back to this spectrum thing, where you have reality and stylization, what you do is so for someone who just ignores the style, maybe their area of, like, maybe they live, for instance, here, right? Like, oh, they study from life, they don't think about style, and their style is sort of already pretty strong, so it's influenced, it's stylized, but it's still from reality, like where they chose to study. And I think this is good. Now, with mimicking, you might be pure stylization because you never really learn from reality, but you're just picking and choosing from other people who have already studied from reality. And with creating a style, you study everything about reality in terms of, like, okay, what does this look like? You're not so influenced by style at all, or you could be, but you study reality, and then you start to move towards this end of stylization. It's an understanding of what is this, why is this way? For instance, with anime, you know, why does a nose look the way it does? To do an example, it's like, okay, so maybe someone who studies, or someone who just mimics another artist might see, okay, there's an artist and they draw noses like this, okay? And then they have this thing here and it's darker here, and I'm just gonna copy that. That's the way to draw a nose. Yay. Let's draw noses like this. So they'll take this and they'll just copy this, and it's like they don't really know what it means. They just know, oh, this is how to draw a nose. And maybe they'll try drawing a face from a different angle, you know, maybe a front view. And then it's like, okay, so here's our face and here's our nose, because that's how I learned to draw a nose. Now, problem with this is it looks wrong, right? Because it's not based on reality. Whereas someone who studies reality may, you know, they do a lot of studies, they understand the structure and the anatomy of a nose, they understand, okay, there's nostrils and they come down, you've got the bridge of the nose, you often have shadow if the light's coming from the top, you'll have shadow under the nose, then you have this, I don't know what it's called, this thingy here, is this the glabella, or I don't remember, there's terms for all this, but anyway, yeah, okay, so they've got this, and maybe the light's actually coming from this direction. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get highlights around on this edge. This is going to be more mid-tone. You're going to get a shadow that falls on this side. And then what they do is like, okay, so let me simplify this. Well, you've got something like this. You've got the nostril, and you've got a shadow on this side. And you've got this thing coming down. Okay, let's simplify it further. Well, you could just simplify it more like, okay, you've got a shadow here, and you've got this nose shape. And see, what you've done is sort of gotten to this point, but you've understood it. You know, it's not just, well, I know a nose is like something here. And also it's a case of, well, if I turn the face, what's going to happen? Well, we go back to this reality thing. Okay, what happens? Well, you know, your shapes are going to change. You've got the nostril here. Just understanding the structure. And maybe you have, well, in this case, the nose is sort of pointy, so it's maybe something like this. But yeah, if you have a shadow coming from this side, what's it going to look like? And then you could take this and simplify. It's like, well, if I simplified this to this, I guess I could simplify this as something maybe like this, right? You've got the nostril, which would be here and here. This is really just this shadow plus this shadow combined to form a shape. And so it's like, okay, so this is reality. So when someone says, do I need to learn reality to study a style? It's like, well, if you're the type of person who just mimics style, I guess not, but you're not going to really understand the style. You're just going to be taking styles and like, oh, I could use that, but why? I feel like what happens is sometimes you get people who say, for instance, I draw noses like this, maybe like this, because it's my style. And then it could be wrong, but they say, no, that's my style. But what I think of with style is like the manufactured style is this is your choice. Or it should be a choice, right? Like, do I stylize it or not? Do I draw noses more like this? Are they more rounded? Maybe they're, you know, just very wacky. What decision do I make? And to me, if you cannot draw from reality and you're just drawing something, especially if it's an inherent thing where it's like, oh, I don't really know how to draw noses, but I know that I tend to draw them like this because my arm moves like this or whatever. It's like, okay, well, to me, that's a lack of choice. That's saying I don't actually know what I'm doing. I don't know how to manipulate reality. And so I am just making whatever choice I have available to me. And I think this is why some people actually say the whole don't worry about style thing, is because they don't want people to fall into this, where they're just thinking, okay, I have no basis on reality. I don't have foundations. And what I'm doing is just copying, or else not even copying, and just doing what I can do and sweeping it under the rug of this is a choice. Well, it's not a choice. It's only a choice if, for instance, you could draw it realistically. You could draw it in any different way, and you choose to draw it in this way. And why do you choose to? Because that reflects your personal tastes. That reflects what you would like to see in the world. So with me, I think it's okay to do inherent stuff and learn from reality. I'm totally okay with that. The problem I guess I have is when a lot of artists, because I mean most artists who are asked about style, they all say the same thing. Don't bother learning style, it comes naturally. But does it really? Like, it does if your style is more reserved. Like, if you are someone who draws, first of all, let's say you draw from reality, right? And let's also assume you have a pretty strong, natural, inherent style. Like, the way you see the world is already skewed in a way. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just to say that there, you know, you might look at a shape like this, right? It's just a rectangle. And you might see something like this. Like, oh yeah, this is this shape. And it's much more interesting. Now, someone who's super analytical, not too intuitive, might look at this and just see like, okay, this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and this is this. They can't just make the jump to this. And if they did, they would have to sort of learn why you got from this to this. So anyway, so you have a lot of people who have this really strong inherent style. They just learn from reality, and they naturally over time get to this. And I think that's good, that's fine. But the other thing I noticed is for most people, it doesn't go that far. Like, yeah, you'll get to this point, maybe, but, or maybe not even, but it's a case of like, it tends to be pretty tame. Or you get people who are more in that level 2 category with the mimicking, where they're just sort of looking at different people and saying, well, I like this from this artist, I like this from that artist. And again, that's fine. And you can go really far with any of these, depending on who you are. But the thing is, okay, they don't understand it from the ground level. And they also, because they don't understand it, let's say they picked certain artists that don't quite work, you're not going to be as good as someone who created a style or understands a style and then is manufacturing it by choice. So I feel like when you really want to push a style, for instance, and maybe it's not even in your natural repertoire. Like for me, I see things pretty one-for-one reality-based. Maybe not perfectly, because I assume I'm still affected by, you know, how my own style thing, at least to a point. But I don't see a box and see it all, you know, crazy and cool. I just see it as what it is, you know, very measured. So for me, I need the created style. And I think when you think of many artists, like I always go back to The Simpsons, because with Matt Groening, he colored The Simpsons yellow. And the reason he did that is so that when people are flipping through the channels on TV, when people actually watch TV, they would see it and it would stand out and it would be like, wow, that's interesting, that's unique. But to say that, well, it's just natural and he did nothing, he didn't think about it and it just naturally came about, really? How would you go about doing that? I mean, that would be true if he had some kind of condition where he saw people who are lighter skin and saw them as yellow, because clearly he doesn't have a problem with brown people. Brown people are brown, but white people or Caucasian people become yellow. Well, so the thing is, what he did is he made a choice. He manufactured his style. He also was probably limited in what he could do, because he wasn't drawing, you know, I imagine he wasn't drawing at a super high level. So it's like, well, what are you capable of? And I don't think that's wrong. You know, if, for instance, a person told me, I am not that good at drawing, and I don't draw realistically. I draw like these stick figure things, and all I want to do is make a cool comic that tells a simple story, or even a complex story, but it's more about the story, and I think it's charming to have very simple characters. And so I don't want to learn I don't need to learn all this, and I don't need to even stylize. I just will take what I have, what I'm capable of doing, and use it to the best of my ability. And yeah, maybe I will study how people move and stuff, and I'll try and replicate that in what limited means I have. That's okay, because that's a real choice. It's like, fine, you are aware of what's going on, and you're making a choice. But if you're the type of person who you study a little bit and you get stuck in, you can't quite draw hands because hands are hard, or you're not really good with faces, or your proportions are wacky. And I got someone who left a comment saying like, proportion, I'm wrong to say proportion and placement is important because anime doesn't have proportions or something, like the proportions are all wrong. No, they're not. That's not what proportion means. Proportion just means like if you have a box and it's, sorry to keep going back to a box, but it's very simple. It's 2 by 2, right? 2 inches by 2 inches. Then you could have a box that's 4 inches by 4 inches and it's the same proportion. And placement just means, let's say you have a sheet of paper and you want to place something right in the middle. Well, okay, so let's say the sheet of paper was much larger. Where would you place it? Right in the middle. That's still in the right, it would be a bit bigger because this box is a tiny bit bigger. It would be the right proportion and the right placement. It has nothing to do with like the proportions of the human body. I mean, that's important to learn proportions of a body, but no, this is just proportion, how big is it? So an anime has proportions. It has a very specific, I mean, anime to say as if all anime is the same, it's not. But whatever you're looking at, let's say you're looking at One Piece, there are proportions. They're distorted in a certain way, but they're still proportions. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So the thing is, like, if you're the type of person who's like, well, I don't really know how to do this, and you sweep it under the cover of, it's just my style, then I think you're cheating yourself, because you're not being honest. You're not actually saying, this is what I want to do. Like, you're not even at the point of the guy who's just drawing stick figures and saying, I don't need the rest. I don't want the rest to accomplish what I need. I need to say something. I want to communicate an idea. And to do that, I don't need all the rest. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But if you are someone who's more ambitious and who thinks perhaps like, I want a style and I want to push it, well, think about how much is inherent and how much do you need to manufacture? How much do you need to create? And again, this is through iteration, just like the signature, figure it out. How do I like to stylize something? It's not just, well, I'm going to draw a bunch of eyes and figure out style. It's like, no, it needs to be based on something, and that gives you freedom. So when you base things on reality and okay, maybe you see an eye and it looks like this, like the lower part is, this part is lower, and this is how one eye looks, and you studied this from life or whatever, and then you saw another eye and it looked more like it had a very heavy lid, right? So if you studied from life, you might think like, okay, well, I know both of these options exist, so I'm not just going to draw like an eye like this and like this, or everybody gets an eye. Maybe you studied, okay, this is a certain way of drawing an anime eye, and you add a bunch of sparklies, and everybody looks like this because that's what I learned. No, it's more like you look at this and it's like, oh, some people have eyes that, the lid isn't as apparent, maybe you'll simplify it like this. And then some people have a heavy eyelid, and it's like, oh, maybe you'll simplify it like this or something, or maybe even with this one, you simplify it like, I don't know, this. It's like, it doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to come from something, So anyway, that's a bit long-winded, but that's what I really wanted to talk about, is that there are manufactured styles and inherent styles, And basing things on reality is really a good way of not cheating yourself. And even if you choose to go like the second route of mimicking, it really helps to have an understanding of why they made that choice. Like, oh, they chose to, for instance, maybe they stopped here, right, with the noses. They chose to simplify from this to this for a purpose. And you'll get it. You'll get why. It's like, okay, well, if they did from this to this, then if it's turned, maybe, you know, they'll do a nose like this. Or if it's, you know, you're looking up at the nose, maybe they simplify it something like this. Instead of being limited. Because I think choice is the most important matter when it comes to style. You want a choice. And also for all the artists who are saying it's not, don't think about it, don't worry about it, please just consider that there are different types of people, and some people want things that they don't currently possess. Maybe they want their style to be more stylized, but they don't have that. And there is a limit to how far you can go, or how far some people can go with a pure inherent style without manufacturing it at all. And yeah, like my whole point is more, don't have a closed mind to these things. So yeah, I hope that helped at least a little bit in terms of explaining what style is, at least to me. And thanks for watching.